Do you ever watch a movie and think, wait a second, is the villain actually right? That cannot be?
I am inevitable.
Right? We've all had that moment. You're sitting there watching the bad guy give their monologue, and instead of rolling your eyes, you're like, okay, they kind of have a point. We grow up believing that heroes are always right and villains are always evil. It's a simple and clear way to tell stories, but then you get older, and things stop being so black and white. You start noticing that some villains actually make sense. They're not just out to destroy things for no reason. Sometimes they have a point. Think about it. Some of the best villains aren't the ones who are just evil for the sake of it. They don't want to destroy the world for fun. They want to fix it. They see injustice, hypocrisy, suffering, and they refuse to look away. The problem? Their methods are what make them the villain. Of course, this doesn't mean their actions are justified. They still go too far. That's what makes them villains. But why do we sometimes feel like the villain is actually the reasonable one? What happens when the villain is actually right? Look at, for example, Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda. He trained harder than anyone, but when he was denied what was promised to him, he snapped. Drago Bloodvist from How to Train Your Dragon 2. He sees dragons as a force of war, something that must be controlled, while Hiccup believes that peace is always possible. And then there's Death from Puss in Boots, probably the most justified villain. I mean, come on, Puss wasted 8 of his 9 lives, and Death was just doing his job. Can you really call him a villain? And let's not forget about one of the most unintentionally sympathetic villains of all time, Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb. The man was abandoned by his parents, raised by ocelots, and forced to stand in for a lawn gnome for years. If that doesn't justify turning evil, what does? A great villain isn't just about chaos or destruction. They have a reason, a cause they believe in so deeply that they're willing to fight for it, even if it means crossing the line. Today we're going to discuss all of these characters and a few more and why they were actually right. But first, what separates a villain with a point from one who's just evil for evil's sake? Some villains have motivations that actually make sense. They see an injustice, a problem in the world, and they want to fix it. The issue? The way they go about it is completely wrong. They take their cause too far, and that's what makes them the villain. Not all villains are evil. Some of them actually make a lot of sense. Well, right up until they start burning down villages or building death rays. See, a great villain doesn't just want things. They believe in something. They have a reason, a goal, and honestly, sometimes their argument is even better than the hero's. But there's a difference between having a point and going full psycho. Let's dive into some different villain approaches first. Right idea, horrible execution villain. Some villains, they're almost right. They see a real problem, but instead of, talking it out, they go straight to murder and destruction. Take Tai Lung. He worked his entire life to become the Dragon Warrior. He was told he deserved it. And then, at the last second, he's rejected. Did he deserve to be upset? Yep. Did he need to destroy a whole village because of it? Not really. Or look at Drago. He saw dragons as dangerous creatures that needed control. And honestly, he had a point. Dragons are destructive. But instead of working with them, he went straight to, I will enslave every dragon and crush anyone who gets in my way. Chill, dude. The villain who thinks they're the hero. Some villains don't even see themselves as villains. They think they're the only one who truly understand the world. Take Viggo from How to Train Your Dragon. Unlike Drago, he wasn't just a brute. He was smart. He didn't hate dragons, he respected them. But instead of protecting them like Hiccup, he saw them as weapons to be used. In his mind, he was the genius strategist, and Hiccup was just a naive kid wasting potential. The villain who was never really a villain. The best example? Take from Moana. We spend the whole movie thinking she's this rage-destructive lava demon monster that wants to destroy everything. But in reality, she was just Fiti all along, a goddess representing the earth, but then furious because her heart was stolen. And honestly, can you blame her? If someone ripped my heart out, I'd probably go full rampage too. However, a little less than Teka, I hope. We're used to thinking the hero is always right and the villain is just some lunatic who needs to be stopped. But what if that's not actually true? What if the villain isn't the real problem and the hero is just getting in the way of something that actually makes sense? Or when the villain is just misunderstood? Let's talk about all villains who maybe even made us switch sides, even if it was for just a second. Dr. Doofenshmirtz, the least evil genius ever. All right, let's lighten things up for a second because we need to talk about Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz. Yes, he's goofy.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't really understand, but I fell down and still now I got glue on.
Yes, he builds ridiculous machines that never work. But let's not ignore the nightmare fuel that is his backstory. This man was raised by ocelots. His parents forgot his birthday every year. He was forced to stand still as a lawn gnome while his brother got everything he ever wanted. At this point, how is he not supposed to turn evil? The wildest part? Most of his evil plans aren't even that bad. Yeah, sure, he calls himself an evil scientist, but like, have you seen his inventions? A machine that makes your voice deeper? Not evil, bro. A ray that makes buildings slightly less attractive? Annoying? Maybe. Evil? Hell no. A freeze ray? That's literally just an advanced air conditioner. These could be billion-dollar products. The dude is out here solving real-world problems and getting stopped by a platypus every day for no reason. Doofenshmirtz isn't evil. He's just unlucky. If life had been kinder, he'd probably be running a tech company instead of trying to take over the tri-state area. And Perry? Perry could just let Doof be Doof. But no, he's legally required to ruin this man's life every single day. Perry has to kick down his door every day and destroy his entire lab. At some point, Doofenshmirtz isn't even the villain. He's just a dude trying his best while Perry bullies him. Death. Death was honestly just doing his job. He's terrifying, he's relentless, and he's hunting Puss down. But here's the thing. He's not some evil force trying to ruin Puss's life. He's literally just doing his job. Puss wasted 8 of his 9 lives like they were nothing. And Death? He's sick of it. He's like, bro, you had 9 chances and you threw them all away. Now it's time to pay up. And to be honest, he's kinda right. If Puss had valued his lives from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Death isn't cruel, he's just fair. He doesn't go around killing for fun, he only hunts those who disrespect life. Puss was the reckless one. That's what makes him so terrifying. He's not some vengeful force. He's not out for power, he's just inevitable. If anything, Death is the reason Puss finally learns to appreciate life. And let's be real, he's probably the most badass villain we've seen in years. That whistle? It's so chilling. Was he ever really the villain? You tell me. Drago Bloodvist. He was too far gone. Some villains have a point. Some villains could have been saved. And then you have villains like Drago. This guy, he's not just a threat. He's like a force of nature. He doesn't want peace. He doesn't want redemption. He wants total domination. But here's the thing. His backstory actually makes sense. And if things had gone differently, he might not have become a villain at all. Drago didn't wake up one day and decide to enslave every dragon on the planet for fun. He became the way he was because of a trauma that never healed. Years ago, his village was wiped out by dragons. He saw his own people slaughtered. And when he reached out for help, what happened? The other chiefs laughed him out of the room. That's the moment he snapped. Drago stopped seeing dragons as living creatures and started seeing them as weapons. Something to be controlled before they could destroy more lives. And honestly, if you had seen your entire home burned to the ground by giant fire-breathing monsters, would you trust dragons either? Drago's fear of dragons was completely justified. The problem? Instead of trying to understand them, he decided that the only way to survive was to control them by force. Drago and Hiccup actually had the same goal: to live in a world where humans and dragons could exist together. The difference? Hiccup believed in trust, and Drago believed in fear. Hiccup saw dragons as friends, while Drago saw them as weapons. And when you look at their pasts, it's not surprising. Hiccup was raised by Stoic, a father who, despite being overprotective, loved him. Drago was rejected by everyone who could have helped him. Drago's entire life reinforced one thing: the world is cruel and the only way to survive is through absolute control. Hiccup's journey was about breaking cycles and choosing peace. But Drago? He was too far gone. He is the ultimate villain who had a point but took it too far. He wasn't wrong to fear dragons. He wasn't wrong to be angry at the world. But unlike Hiccup, he had never anyone to show him another way. Tai Lung. He wasn't entirely wrong. Now, let's go back to Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda. Look, we all love Po. He's a goofball, he's got a big heart, and yeah, he earned his place as the Dragon Warrior. But let's be real, Tai Lung had every right to be pissed. This guy trained his whole life to be the Dragon Warrior. His master, Shifu, raised him to believe he was special, that he was destined for greatness. Imagine working your entire life for something, only to have some mystical turtle drop a wisdom bomb on you like, "Sorry kid, you just don't have the right energy." Did Tai Lung overreact? Absolutely. But was he just some power-hungry villain from the start? Not really. He was a victim of bad mentorship. Shifu hyped him up for years, then did nothing to guide him when he was rejected. The real tragedy? If Shifu had actually talked to Tai Lung instead of just abandoning him, maybe none of this would have happened. Tai Lung is the perfect example of a villain that we fear but understand at the same time. Grimmel the Grizzly. Not wrong, just heartless. Grimmel from How to Train Your Dragon 3. This guy isn't some brute like Drago. He's calculated. He doesn't kill dragons out of hate or revenge. He does it because he believes they should not exist. He kind of has a point, right? How much I love dragons, let's be real for 1 second. Dragons are massively powerful, unpredictable creatures that, if left unchecked, could wipe out entire populations. So his logic isn't completely insane. The only reason we side with Hiccup is because we've seen the good in dragons. But from Grimmel's perspective, they're a threat that needs to be eliminated before they turn on humans. His flaw? He enjoys the hunt too much. If he had just been a logical dragon control advocate instead of a genocidal maniac, we might have actually listened to him. Taka. She was never the villain, not really at least. Or should I say, Fiti. For most of the movie, we think she's this rage-filled lava monster destroying everything in her path. She's terrifying, powerful, and seems like she's just out for destruction. But then Moana figures it out. Ka was never the villain. She was just Fiti all along, robbed of her heart, stripped of her identity, and left in unbearable pain. And let's be honest, if someone literally ripped your heart out, wouldn't you be mad too? Wouldn't you lash out? She wasn't evil, she was hurt. She was reacting. And the real villain? Maui. Dude stole her heart, ruined her existence, and then just dipped for 1,000 years. And somehow, she's the bad guy? Nah, she deserved better. Viggo Grimborn, the smartest villain in the room. Most villains in How to Train Your Dragon are pretty straightforward. Drago, straight-up tyrant. Grimmel, dragon murderer. But then you've got Viggo Grimborn, the guy who actually had brains. Viggo wasn't some bloodthirsty warlord, he was a tactician, a chess player. Unlike Drago, he didn't hate dragons, he admired them. He saw their power and wanted to harness it. Hiccup believed in coexisting with dragons, which is great, until you remember that dragons are massive fire-breathing creatures capable of wiping out entire villages. Not everyone was going to be on board with the "we can all be friends" approach. Viggo didn't want chaos, he wanted control. In his eyes, Hiccup was the reckless one, letting dragons roam freely without understanding the risks. And let's not forget, Viggo actually respected Hiccup. He didn't want to destroy him, he wanted to outsmart him. And honestly, if the roles were reversed, Hiccup probably would have seen a lot of himself in Viggo. He wasn't a villain, he was just a man with a different strategy. But before we continue, real quick, I need your help. I'm trying to reach more subs, so I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and help me out. All right, let's get back to the story. Syndrome, a kid who never got his shot. Syndrome's story isn't just about being a villain, it's about rejection, obsession, and proving the world wrong. As a kid, Buddy Pine idolized Mr. Incredible. He just wanted to help. He had the brains, the passion, and the drive to be a hero. He wanted to prove that you didn't need powers to be special. But what happened? What did his hero tell him?
I can fly. Can you fly?
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
That moment? That's where Syndrome was born. Instead of giving up, Buddy evolved. He realized that power shouldn't be limited to a chosen few, so he decided to level the playing field. If everyone is super, then no one is. That's not a crazy idea, to be honest, right? The idea of hero gatekeeping is a real problem in the superhero world. If you're born without powers, are you just supposed to accept that you'll never be more than average?
But I learned an important lesson. You can't count on anyone, especially your heroes.
I love that there's a certain part of Syndrome that never changed. As a kid, he immediately assumes he has a position of being Mr. Incredible's sidekick without ever consulting him about it. As an adult, he introduces himself as your nemesis to Mr. Incredible's, despite it being their first meeting in over 15 years. Syndrome's goal wasn't just revenge, it was equality. Besides that, he had an obsession with Mr. Incredible, I guess. The problem? His execution was insane. By insane, I mean really insane. Instead of proving himself by helping people, he murdered real heroes just to perfect his tech. If Mr. Incredible had been just a little kinder, if Buddy had channeled his genius into good, Syndrome could have been one of the greatest heroes of all time. Instead, he let his pain consume him. I think Syndrome was definitely he was super smart. Dagur the Deranged, a villain who redeemed himself. Dagur, one of the rare villains who actually changed sides. At first, he was completely unhinged. The dude had zero chill. As the leader of the Berserkers, he was a violent warlord, obsessed with power and proving his strength. And yet, he wasn't entirely evil. He was just raised in a world where power was everything. From his perspective, Hiccup and the Dragon Riders were weaklings playing with fire. Dragons should be conquered, not befriended. Sound familiar? It's basically a lighter version of Drago's ideology, but the difference? Dagur wasn't beyond saving. Unlike other villains, he actually listened. Over time, he realized that Hiccup wasn't weak. He was just smart. He saw that dragons weren't weapons, and that maybe, just maybe, his way wasn't the only way. His redemption arc was one of the best in the franchise. He went from an unhinged psycho to a genuine ally. It proves that sometimes villains don't have to stay villains. They just need someone to believe in them. The best villains change the story. Because without the villain, what is the hero? Puss thought he was invincible, until death reminded him that he wasn't. Moana thought she was fighting a monster until she realized she was just facing someone in pain. Po thought he was a joke, until Tai Lung made him step up and fight. Hiccup thought peace was the answer, until Drago made him understand the cost. And some villains, they never stop. They never listen. Drago, Grimmel, Syndrome, they were given chances, but they were too far gone. But Dagur, he chose a different path. He proved that sometimes villains don't have to stay villains, that people can change if they want to. Maybe that's what makes a villain so terrifying. Not their power, not their cruelty, but the fact that in another life, in another world, they could have been the hero. A hero might save the day, but a villain makes the story worth telling. Some villains never had to be villains. Sometimes, all it would have taken was one person to listen. One moment of kindness. Most villains didn't start as villains, they started as people. And maybe if someone had listened, had cared, maybe they wouldn't have had to die alone.